All right, everybody. It is everyone's favorite Vikings podcast that is half based out of Ohio and half based out of Minnesota, obviously. Load the box. I am your host, Jordan Hawthorne. I'm wearing, this is probably my favorite shirt that I own because it is both a Hawaiian shirt and it also gives off the aesthetic of a 90s couch, which is the vibe I want to give. So I'm hatless. That's something to talk about. Look, man, we're recording this like the Monday before July 4th. We're reaching, okay? We went to the bag of tricks and Kirk Cousins wasn't there anymore, so we didn't know what to talk about after that. So we have a fun show planned for you tonight. But before we get into anything too football-y here in July, Will, how are you doing?
Jordan, I'm hanging in. You know the week leading up to Independence Day. There's just a lack of focus and you're thinking about fireworks and hot dogs and ice cream and all that. Like there's much less than work on the mind, I should or much many more things than work on the mind, I should. Also on the mind is, if you're a basketball fan, it's free agency starting in the NBA, so although NBA free agency is much different now than it was before the new CBA, it's a whole nother topic. Second aprons and all that jazz. It's a much more muted free agency day, but there's still some moves here and there. There's some trades that happen, and a couple things. Timberwolves, Joe Ingles re-signed, whoop-de-doo. Um, but the one thing that honestly was a little bit sad for me, and maybe a little bit more sad than I had thought, is Nickeil Alexander-Walker is gone, which I think Wolves fans all expected. Salary cap was gonna ice him out, but it made me think, Jordan. Speaking of sad things related to basketball, how are you doing? How are you holding up, hanging in? It's been since I think Game 4 was the last time we spoke, and there was still hope in Naptown, and many things happened in the following 2 to 3 games, and I just want to check in with you. How are you doing?
I am not a I'm a football guy, and the pesos were like my summer fling. I get a new summer fling every year, but this one felt a little bit different. Like this was like the team that I went to games and cheered for growing up, and I told the story on the last show we did about my dad. Maybe I didn't say it on air, but my dad met Dwight Freeney right before they beat the Bears in the Super Bowl. Him and the Colts, and so what would that would be like '06, I believe, maybe '07. So I was 9 or 10. I had no idea what was going on. I just sat in the car for like 20 minutes with my brother and my mom while my dad was talking to NFL players or whatever. But it hurts about as bad as like a wild card loss to me. Obviously, it's a much different thing losing in the championship game in in a game 7. When the Halaban is making threes, you're like, oh my gosh, he really hasn't had the like 50-point explosion game yet, and he waited until game 7. This is going to be insane. And then he blew his Achilles. That didn't feel good. That one hurt. That was the equivalent of like 2017, Vikings march down in Philly, score a touchdown on the opening drive, all day long. We're going to the Super Bowl, no doubt about it. And then it just all snowballed downhill. Obviously, the games played out different. Indiana, I believe they were up 1 at half. If I'm not mistaken, they were up 1 at half. They gave it their all. You know, it was a fun seat. Like it was a fun. Again, I'm not a big basketball guy. I'm gonna try and get more into it next year, like regular season wise. But man, there really is something about the NBA playoffs that really does feel like, oh yeah, this is what I wish. If the entire season felt like that, man, I think I'd be a bigger basketball guy, but it just doesn't anymore. They kind of they ramp the physicality up and they play a lot more, whatever. So there you go. That's my basketball take. I'm okay. I'll live. The Reds just took 2 out of 3 from the Padres, so we'll take that. They lost the one that I went to, of course, but we'll live. Baseball will hold us over until training camp.
Which is not that far from now, which is crazy. I mean, as you're listening to this, it's July. Training camp is 3 weeks away, and before you know it, football and football buzz will be back in the air, and that's all they'll talk about on SportsCenter. So, um, why don't we jump right into it, Jordan? We wanted to talk about Vikings players that need to elevate their play this season, and in order for the Vikings to get where they want to go. And obviously, getting to where they want to go is ambiguous. I mean, I think a lot of it, obviously, we're just going to remove JJ McCarthy from this discussion because obviously, JJ McCarthy has to play well. JJ McCarthy can't, fall on his face. All that, like, that goes without saying. But let's assume JJ McCarthy's competent. What do the Vikings need from these other maybe ancillary pieces, and who are those ancillary pieces if they want to, let's say, win a playoff game? Dare I say, win 2 playoff games? And then you start having to look at the margins and how you can get more from players that maybe are unsung. So Jordan, who sticks out for you? You can pick any spot, offense side of the ball, defense side of the ball.
I'm gonna jump in with one of my favorite Vikings, who I'm not naive. Okay, I'm not gonna be a homo. Ivan Pace Jr. has to be better than what he has been. He's a really good blitzer and run stopper. He has to get more consistent in pass coverage so he can be more of an every down type of player, and not such a, I don't want to say gadgety, but so defenses can't pick on specifically, oh, they put the little guy in. They'll probably blitzing. And if they're not, throw it at the little guy. Like, throw it near the little guy. He probably is in the wrong spot in coverage. So I'm going to go with Ivan Pace Jr. I think that the defense, I'm looking at the depth chart. Really not a ton of, like, there's a lot of changeover, but there's not, like, still Cashman. It's still Harrison Phillips. It's still like it feels like all of the foundational pieces are still there. They just add, like, the secondary just had some guys that switched up. So I think if we want to take that next step, and I think if the Vikings are going to win the Super Bowl, the defense has to be like, oh, okay, that was one of those defenses that we talk about 15 years from now as like, man, that was a special defense. And Ivan Pace can't be the Ivan Pace we've seen is not a part of a special defense. I don't think. I think he's just like a solid, rotational piece to a defense. So I want to see him step up and become, like, I almost said an all-star because I'm in baseball mode. I like become a Pro Bowl type player.
I really like that take because I think it's kind of nitpicking because he's an established starter and he's been the green dot guy, and he's had some really good moments in the NFL. Obviously, that pick in Las Vegas a couple of years ago was huge. The backflip, all that. And he has already outperformed his undrafted free agent status.
Oh, 1,000%.
Right? So I love that that's where you start, though, because it's pointing to if this Vikings team actually wants to be something better than just a cool, competitive team, they need guys like him to take the next step. Kind of in that same vein, and we've talked about this, and I won't spend too much time on this, but TJ Hawkinson is another one like that.
Big time.
TJ had a fine season last year, in his shortened, season after coming back from the ACL tear. And we talked about this in the last show, right? Josh Oliver getting the extension, sort of, I think you put it, puts a little pressure on Hawkinson and sort of says, all right, this other guy's here to stay. And, his Hawkinson's contract is escaping me. He got an extension as well, so it's not like he's going anywhere. But depending on how this team shakes out, depending on how this identity kind of comes to fruition here, are they truly going to become a power running team, et cetera, et cetera? Could Hawkinson potentially become trade bait? If he is not living up to his contract and Oliver is surpassing him in terms of snaps and efficacy and all that. So something to keep an eye on. I have belief in TJ Hawkinson. Here comes the Chris Broussard. I believe in you.
Yeah.
On the Bud list. On first things first. But I think this season matters for him. He's fully healthy now, and he's got to step up again. And I shouldn't even say step up. It's not like he had a bad year, but he has to remain consistent. He has to remain sort of the threat that he was. I think when I think of peak TJ Hawkinson last season, I think the Bears overtime win in Chicago. That's sort of what stands out to me. I mean, he took over that game in the overtime period especially, but he had a number of huge catches in that game. He's got to be that type of threat, even if he's not getting over 100 yards a game. That's obviously a ridiculous standard for a tight end, but he has to be that level of threat, especially if. And I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on this, but if the Vikings are without Jordan Addison for any period of time, his jury trial starts in 2 weeks, by the way, July 15th. If the Vikings are without him for any period of time due to suspension, they're going to need guys in the, at this point we'd say wide receiver 3, but guys like Ty Felton, Rondale Moore, Jalen Naylor, they have to elevate their game as well. But like I said, especially if we're without Addison, Hawkinson needs to just raise himself a level in order to maintain the offense's viability. What do you think about the whole wide receiver 3 thing, in terms of how much it matters that somebody separates themselves from that pack, kind of becomes a bona fide third option? Or is this team going to keep 5, maybe 6 receivers anyways, and it doesn't really matter who takes the role as long as somebody is always cycling in
Yeah. No,
being
I
effective in
think
different ways?
it's critical, especially with that Addison suspension looming. I mean, look, I think the Vikings have made no secret that that they want to run the damn ball, and unfortunately, JJ McCarthy's still gonna have to throw the ball a few times. Like as much as some fans are like, no, this guy can't play, he's terrible. I haven't, whatever. Like he's gonna have to throw the ball at minimum. I don't know, is 25 times an acceptable number? Like that seems low. Seems average.
That
Like
seems that seems about as low as you could
yeah,
expect in
like
2025.
yeah, like a minimum of 25 passes a game. And Jefferson can't get them all. This isn't Madden. You can't just force feed your number one and expect the AI defense that's set to, rookie to not adapt to you because it doesn't know any better. So, yeah, I mean, somebody needs to step up. And, I flirted with the idea of putting Jordan Mason on this list and kind of going that route and being like, oh, he's never played here, but like we need him to come in and be a a high level contributor. But I think that plays into it too. The entire offense is really going to need, even when Addison's back. So now I'm just cheating. I'm just giving a different take than what you asked me. But the entire offense is going to have to lift JJ McCarthy up. I don't even the most optimistic JJ McCarthy truthers, I don't think that he's going to come out of the gates hair on fire, 5,500 yard passing season, 38 touchdowns, 7 interception type. Like no one's. I'm like, I'd be happy if he threw for 3,500 yards and 20 touchdowns. Like not a great season, but we ran the ball a ton. Jones and Mason went for like 1,900 yards. Like I'm okay with that. I can live with that. Like I think they want to shift the identity, and so I'm going to say that it's not just Hawkinson and Ty Felton and Jalen Naylor and all those guys, and Rondale Moore, who, again, you said his name, and I forgot that he plays for the Vikings now. All those guys obviously need to step up in the passing game, but the offense as a whole, they just need to, like, the first month of the season, they really need to run the ball efficiently, I think. Like, that's going to be crucial if that's the time that Addison misses.
I think that points to just another bigger topic, and I mean we could go 45 minutes on this topic, but the offensive line, I'm not going to say they all need to step up or something first take appropriate, but I think in general they need to perform to the level at which they are being compensated. And I think there is reason to believe that it should go well, but there's also reason to have some smidgen of doubt just because of the injury history with these guys.
Yep.
Not because you shouldn't believe Will Fries, aka Spud, is gonna be a sack of potatoes over there. Okay, enough with the potato jokes. Or why Christian Darrisaw is gonna regress or something. He's an awesome player and he's one of the best handful at his position. Those are guys who are coming off major leg injuries. And if I'm not mistaken, Ryan Kelly, the newly acquired center, not only is he a veteran, but he's also been dinged up. If I could be wrong on that, we can fact check that later. But I mean, it's just and uh, Brian O'Neill himself, he's had lower leg injuries as well. So it's the nature of the position. It's of course every team's dealing with this, but I think those guys not only as a whole need to perform when they're on the field and have a level of consistency and continuity from a group that has never played together, but they also just have to stay healthy.
Yeah.
And so not that I'm losing sleep over the offensive line, but I think it's not as if that has all of a sudden just been signed, sealed, delivered. It's perfect. Chris Cooper and the offensive line team, they have to do a lot of work in the next 2 months to get this group healthy, buttoned up, and ready to execute on Monday Night Football against the Bears because it's just if this offense is going to actually move and run the ball and um you know perform to the level that they need to in order for this team to be competitive in a really good division, it starts with those guys up front, which we've seen, which has hampered the Vikings in years past. So I just felt like I felt like we couldn't get through this episode without mentioning the offensive line
Oh,
just because of
1,000%.
how new it is and how important it is, even though I wouldn't point to one particular guy and say, okay, he is the problem. I just think as a group there needs to be a level of sustained success there.
I agree with that. I think that everyone's kind of, and again, I'm optimistic about it. I think everybody's kind of optimistic about it. You go out, you spend that much money, you get established guys, you bring in Donovan Jackson, like you overhaul the inside of the O line. Everyone's going to be like, oh, cool, they actually they got the guys that we wanted them to get. Like it wasn't like they went out and they kicked the tiles on Pat Elflein to see what he's been up to the last few years. Like no, they went out and they got like established guys who are really good at playing those positions, but cohesion, chemistry, all of that stuff really matters along the offensive line, and so you have to hope that develops. And the fact that these guys deal with injuries a lot, that can throw a wrench in that, and that can very quickly go from 2025 is going to be the year the Vikings run the ball to, they couldn't run the ball well because they, had to start like Blake Brandel and Justin School or whatever his name is, along the offensive line for 6 weeks, and that just threw them off. I want to get on a soapbox for a minute and really just cheat here. The whole defense is honestly, you got to do something similar to last year, and that's really difficult to do because oh, it's the weather in Middletown's being announced to me, guys. It's 9 p.m. Eastern. The whole defense is it's really difficult. Sorry, finding my train of thought. Really difficult to put back-to-back elite defensive seasons together. I think we've seen that. We just expected 2017 to 2018. This defense is going to be great, and it was still a good defense, but it wasn't, forcing turnovers, flying around, doing as much as it was. And I gotta say it, man. I don't love that right now as it stands. 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, June 30th. Mekhi Blackmon should not be. I don't like that he's penciled in as the starting second corner or first corner, whichever position. He was a guy who was already kind of so-so, and he's coming off a knee injury, and we're all just or maybe it's not we're all, but the Vikings front office is acting like, yeah, I'm sure he developed while he was, in a wheelchair for a couple months or whatever. This guy needs I don't know. I just don't like it. Mekhi Blackmon is I'll put it all on him. I'll put all this angst that I have about the defense on him. He is the fact that he's being penciled in as one of the starting members of the secondary has me really concerned about the defense and how good it's going to be, because I've seen Mekhi Blackmon play. He was an okay corner, and we were excited about his development. But assuming that he's just going to develop into now an even better corner, maybe better than just okay, after a major knee injury, I think that's here's a wild fight. That's poppycock, and I won't have it.
Question for you on that, which because I think that topic is very important and very pertinent to this whole thing. Who is most likely in your mind, if you had to, lay down a bet on it, who's going to be the most impactful corner between Blackman, Nudie McGlothern, and Jeff Okuda this season?
Wow. I was waiting for you to say Isaiah Rodgers because I was going to take the low hanging fruit.
Oh, Isaiah Rodgers is the easy pick. Of course, I'm
Yeah.
not going to put him in there. It's Brian
um,
Flores' favorite player.
I and this is where like there's that thing where fans like want guys that it's like the backup quarterback's the most popular player because he could definitely do better than the guy that actually plays, like that whole thing. I can't get that stat that Travis Hunter, had like the lowest passer rating against him since Nudie McLaughlin. Like, I can't get it out of my head. He's in there. He's in there like a catchy one hit wonder. Like I really think that if he gets a chance to get on that field, he's gonna be really good. And you know what? I won't even say he's gonna be really good, but I think he'll be as good as Mekhi Blackman coming off of an ACL injury. I like, he's healthy. He's been healthy. He's been developing. He hasn't had a major knee injury in the last 12 months. I think I would get my money if they all got equal snaps. I'd put it on McLaughlin to have the best season. Unfortunately, I feel like the right answer, if I was actually betting, would have to be Mekhi Blackman, just because I don't even know if Okuda makes the team. To be honest with you, like he's a depth guy. Like looking at the depth chart that they released and just the vibe that I'm getting from the team, I think Mekhi Blackman's playing a majority of the snaps between them. So I don't know. Maybe he ends up being the most impactful in a negative way, and I'm correct on that because of that. But yeah, I really like Nudie McGlothern. I wish that they would have put him as the starter and had Mekhi Blackman be the backup. I really do. Like I wish they would have been like, yeah, Mekhi Blackman's coming off knee surgery. So we'll see what happens in camp. It's a position battle. Anything can happen. Like that kind of a vibe.
I agree with pretty much all that. Because I think, to me, I mean, the McLaughlin story started last summer, and it was during training camp where this guy that no one knew how to pronounce his name, and he's a super skinny dude who no one had ever heard of, undrafted guy, like was making all these plays and was intercepting balls and was just all over the field, and everyone was taking notice. And so I think that, I mean, it's it kind of, I mean, this is a bad example, but it harkens to when the Timberwolves traded Karl Anthony Towns last summer. And I texted some of my friends and I was like, man, I don't know about this trade. And to be, in all honesty, I was a Julius Randle hater at the time, and I eat my words. But I was like, man, like I don't know what we're thinking with this. Like, is Randall going to become, Towns' replacement? And the response I got from one of my friends was, I think this speaks to the level of trust they have in Naz Reid. And I think there could be something there with the McLaughlin piece. Maybe they don't feel like they need to go get somebody because they really think McLaughlin is going to step up and be a big part of this defense. That would be a very risky bet to take for a guy who's, I don't know, he played like 6 NFL snaps ever, but I think they really like him. And I think he's a guy that gets talked about more than I don't know, people of his stature normally would, and so I think there's something there. So I'd have to agree with you on that take, and I'd love to be proven wrong if Blackman just comes back and is awesome.
Oh, so would I. So I have nothing against the guy.
Got swagger. He's got confidence. He came from USC. He's played big time football. He had moments as a rookie. I would love to see him just blossom. And, but yeah, I mean, ACL surgery for a cornerback ain't great. So, anyway, Jordan, any last thoughts on this topic before we call it here?
No, I think that's about all I had. I didn't mean to come into this all defense, but I did. I mean, I really do have. I'll end with this. I really do have anxiety about the defense. Um, Andrew Van Ginkel just had the best season of his entire life, and I don't know. I've noticed a trend in my football life when a guy who isn't that good has a breakout season this late in his career. It's usually not the new standard. That's usually the flash in the pan. You know what I mean? And so I'm not saying Andrew Van Ginkel's gonna suck, but like, is he gonna have like 3 opportunities at pick sixes next year, or are teams gonna learn like, oh, just do a pump fake when we throw wide receiver screens, and then throw the ball. You know what I mean? Like, our team's gonna figure that out. Like, it doesn't seem that complicated, but it's little things like that where it's like I said, it's really how, and this comes from a fantasy football perspective, because I used to just draft my defense based off of last year's who had the best defense, and I learned pretty quickly you can't do that, because it's hard to put a defense out there. There's so much luck with turnovers. There's so much injury luck. There's just too many factors that go into running the same defense out there week after week. The Chiefs have this advantage offensively of they know the offense will be fine as long as 15 is healthy. Like that they know that's fine. The Vikings don't have that, so there's just more question marks than I think a lot of people are admitting to right now.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say is I think sometimes I forget, kind of the topic of this podcast was, talking about growth from players that sort of happens in the summertime, spring and summer. And I think we can't forget things like Dallas Turner is going to be better. And if he's not, that's obviously a problem. But I think you can almost bake in 30% improvement from Dallas Turner, and you also are getting new pieces added to the puzzle. This isn't just a run it back defense. This is a group that reshuffled the deck and got some established big boys up front, and so different pieces. It's not like you just automatically improve everywhere because of new players, but I think the new life, the new flavor. Flores is going to have a different approach to things with the different personnel. So I don't know if you were exactly saying this, but I think there is a little bit of, because you're going to have an ability to do things differently, you're not going to be as predictable. It's not like they're just going to, rinse and repeat what they did in 24 and expect it to work. Because I think you could look back on Viking seasons in the past where, like you said, 2018, you just expect the defense to be awesome. Teams have, opponents have watched your film all summer long because they know that team's going to be really good at defense. We need to figure out how to solve them. So I think in this case, hopefully, and I would imagine that these new pieces coming in, they're just going to make it harder for teams to prep for. Yeah. So that's it for now. On the podcast side, we will continue on here in a second, and we'll keep going. We're going to talk about the division at large, but on the YouTube side, we'll catch you on the flippity flop. The division discussion will be posted in a couple days. Happy 4th of July, everybody. Skol, y'all.